A lot of people don't know this, but we actually have a strategic reserve for butter in Canada. Did you know that? Yeah. Run by the CDC, the Canadian Dairy Commission, which is a crown corporation owned by you and I. And so butter's a really serious thing in Canada.
Food, like life, can be complicated. That's why I'm on a quest to learn all about our food and the crimes, issues, and debates that are tied to it. I hope you'll join me on my quest to explore the dark side of dining. Twas Christmas Day 2021 when all of a sudden 2 truckloads of butter were found on the run. While this might sound like some nonsense created by an AI, this is precisely what happened in Trenton, Canada several years ago. 4 suspects broke into a trucking facility and stole, out of all the things they could have, 2 truckloads of butter worth nearly 200 grand. And this is just one of a surprising number of incidents involving the theft of butter in Canada. They say crime doesn't pay, but it seems butter has become Canadian criminals', well, bread and butter. To help me learn more about Canada's bountiful butter issues, I brought on Sylvain Charlebois, or as he likes to be called, the food professor, but I'll let him introduce himself.
I started my career probably, about 25 years ago now. So I've been doing this for a while, and obviously I'm an academic, and so my job is to do research in the area of food, and my area of expertise is food policy and distribution. So basically, I look at both ends of the food continuum, essentially. And so farming is of interest, processing is of interest, retailing, transportation, logistics, food service, restaurants. I mean, all aspects of food systems are of interest to us as a lab. So, and of course, I started my career in Saskatchewan. I'm originally from Quebec, and there's a unique ecosystem there when it comes to food in Quebec. And then I transferred over to Saskatchewan, where I started my academic career, did a few years also in Guelph, 7 years there. And then I landed in Adel about a decade ago. And so I've been doing basically the same. Now, what's different with my approach personally is that I've been out there a little bit more. So I do not just inform the public, but sometimes I see issues and I tend to be quite vocal about them. And whether it's with industry or government, doesn't matter to me. There's always something going on that would require some attention. And frankly, most of the time in the food industry, some issues are pretty complicated. And so you kind of want to take a step back, explain, and then advocate once you know that people understand what's at stake.
The food professor is a fairly well-known voice in the food world, and for good reason, because he actually speaks up. So I decided to ask him why butter, of all things, would be the target of criminals.
Yeah. Actually, you know, a lot of people don't know this, but we actually have a strategic reserve for butter in Canada. Did you know that? Yeah. Run by the CDC, the Canadian Dairy Commission, which is a crown corporation owned by you and I. And so butter's a really serious thing in Canada. And of course, butter became much more expensive. It's about $8 to $9 a pound now. And if you're a restaurant operator, that's a problem. And so if someone calls you and say, listen, I can get you butter for $3 a pound, no questions asked, it's pretty tempting. If no one's going to know about it, it's pretty tempting. So as soon as prices go up for anything, really, there is a black market that emerges. And that's kind of what happened with butter. It's the best place to go. Yeah. Because once it gets into the hands of a restaurateur, like how would you know as a consumer that the butter was counterfeited? It's impossible to know.
Who knows? Perhaps you've had a taste of black market butter at your favorite restaurant. It's not like you know the difference just by looking at it. However, Canadians started to notice a different kind of change in their butter several years back, leading to the cleverly named Buttergate scandal.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's a complicated issue as well. That's a good example. So, for consumers, basically, there was a growing number of complaints about the quality of butter in Canada. It wasn't spreading at room temperature, and frankly, it's still the case today. The quality of the butter in Canada is not very good, and we decided to look into it, only to find out is that we actually realized that more and more dairy farmers were using a product that stemmed from palm oil derivatives to actually feed cows and increase butter fat content. So when you actually get milk from a cow, you get fluid milk and you get butter fat. And with butter fat, you get more money. There was a lot of money. There's still a lot of money because people are drinking less milk, but they need more fat. The industry needs more fat to produce all sorts of dairy products that we actually buy. So it actually made economic sense to actually want to have cows to produce more fat, butter fat. But the industry was never very transparent about it because obviously, well, you can see the problem. First of all, you're talking about palm oil, and with the blue cow image being environmentally friendly and all that stuff. I mean, palm oil is certainly a questionable ingredient that comes from halfway around the world. And two, the quality of the butter. I mean, there was no monitoring whatsoever. So we did the work for the industry, published a report in a highly ranked journal, and it created Buttergate basically. And because we brought some science to the whole issue, but of course, dairy's dairy. They'll deny everything because they can, because they don't publish anything. They don't provide any information to consumers. And frankly, to know exactly what's going on farms, you would need to visit all farms in the country, and that's impossible. And they know that. They know that. So we're just trying to make something that is not very transparent a little more transparent by outing some of the practices for the betterment of society, for consumers, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. With Buttergate, it really worked well because I mean it went viral around the world.
Buttergate got a lot of media attention, enough for me to have come across it in my research for this episode. But what's the point in getting attention if nothing changes? So I asked Sylvain whether any changes actually happened as a result of Buttergate. So has this whole Buttergate thing led to any actual greater transparency with the dairy industry at all, or is there more to be done in that area?
Well, I must say, I mean, when it came out, I think it was 4 years ago now, I guess. They actually temporarily banned the practice, which was huge. It was the first time I've never seen the dairy farmers of Canada recognizing that some people were complaining. And so to force them to ask farmers to stop doing something, and they probably didn't, by the way, just so you know. So if it's all about image for them, it's all about image because we don't know for sure if they stopped, right? And my guess is that they didn't. So they didn't want to see this huge disconnect between butter without palm oil derivatives versus butter with palm oil derivative with the use of it's called palmite, the product. And so I do think that we did accomplish something, but my guess is that they did an investigation, investigation by themselves about themselves. So you get where I'm going with this, and they didn't even recognize any of our work. Like if you read the report, they didn't even we didn't exist basically, and it was published data, published information in an academic journal. So you can tell it was very political, just to basically get people to say, you know what, we've looked into this. It's not just carry on. There's nothing to see here, and that's it. And it kind of worked because nobody really is asking any questions anymore. But it does come back from time to time, though.
As we came towards the end of our conversation, I asked Sylvain if there were any other issues surrounding butter that he wanted to touch on. And here's what he had to say. So before we move on, do you have any other comments or things you want to mention related to Buttergate, black market butter, any of that?
Well, I mean, there's the other Bovaer is actually the new thing going on right now. So they came up with this feed, this cow feed that actually makes cows burp less. emitting less gas emissions, essentially, because we all know that the livestock industry is responsible for a big portion of gas emissions coming from agriculture. And so there's been some research done to create a feed that would actually make cows emit fewer emissions. And so it's been approved in Canada, but it's highly controversial because people like Canadians aren't necessarily keen in seeing cows being fed something that may not be seen as natural. It is natural, but there's this issue, and it's on social media quite a bit, that the problem we have with that is that if you ask the dairy farmers of Canada, how many dairy farmers are using Bovaer? And the answer that we get is none. But do we know for sure? I mean, do we know for sure? Because they're all under pressure to reduce gas emissions. So how are they doing it? If gas emissions are being reduced in the dairy sector, how are they doing it? And so that's why the lack of transparency is always a problem.
As we wrapped up our conversation on butter, I had to ask Sylvain if he had any advice on how we can be more conscientious in general, especially when it comes to butter. And to my surprise, the conversation turned to a couple of topics that come up a lot in the food world: adulteration and counterfeiting.
I mean, other than asking questions, maybe if you ask questions, but at the end of the day, it's really it boils down to fair pricing. Really, counterfeiting is probably the hardest food fraud type to catch, because once it gets redirected into the black market, like how would you know if it's stolen or not unless it's tagged and you can actually link it to an incident? So it's really, really difficult. Adulteration is probably the easiest type of food fraud to trace, and there's also some of that going on with oils, for example, spices, with a lot of different products, but not butter. I mean, butter is you can't really adulterate butter very well because it's just it's a one ingredient product.
Okay, so for those who might not know what adulteration is, what do you mean when you're talking about like counterfeiting adulteration with food?
Well, let's say, for example, you sell olive oil, and we all know olive oil is expensive. You'll just pour some canola oil in it, and make it look like olive oil. Basically, that's adulteration, and that's a big problem because, well, for one, it's fraud. You're paying more for what the product is worth. One, two, it can actually be an allergen. A lot of people are allergic to canola, and so you're buying a product that is mislabeled. It can be actually a public health risk. And so those are the worst in my view. But adulteration is a really huge problem because it mainly means that the product was mislabeled.
Adulteration is a topic for another day and a great many other products. But while it's not much of an issue in butter, we do need to be aware of the food we eat and how it is produced. Food crime does pay, and there is a startling lack of transparency when it comes to a lot of food industries. So at the end of the day, the best thing we can do is pay attention, learn what we can, and be vocal about it. As the proverb goes, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. There's no better way to say it. The Dark Side of Dining is a production of Food for Thought Audio. This episode was written, produced, and edited by me, Kenny Mears. Sylvain Charlebois is a professor at Dalhousie University in Nova Scotia, Canada. You can find him on X at Food Professor or on Facebook or Instagram as Sylvain Charlebois, as well as on his podcast, The Food Professor. Links will be included in the show notes. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. And as always, thanks for your messages. We read them all, and thanks for listening.